So thank you
There
so
we
much
are.
for joining the podcast series. It's been really interesting, and you're one of the guests I was really looking forward to having on. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your blog?
Okay, well, let's take it all the way back to when I was 2 years old. I'm kidding, but yeah, childhood disorder is what initiates the whole process of anxiety and depression. And so let's start when I was young. I was a relatively incorrigible young man. Had no discipline, stayed out all night, got into fights, got drunk on the beach, had a wonderful time. I was emotionally abusive, both to myself and others, negative, depressed, anxious, suicidal, ideated. But here's the deal: in my younger days, no one had ever heard of social anxiety disorder. It's only 30 years old, and I'm older than 30 years old. So I just lived the normal life that I was going to say the typical life of someone with social anxiety disorder who didn't know what it was, and it's different for everyone. Like I said, I was kind of out of there. I was confused. So I grew up in Hollywood. I played with theater. I wrote and directed for theater. I taught Stanislavski for a time. Did a couple of bit parts on television and in film, and invariably ended up on the cutting room floor. But I had a good time. Um, and then after the film industry kind of beat me up and sent me packing, I became an international contract negotiator for telecommunications. So, like one extreme to the other. And well, it was kind of nice. I wanted to see what it was like to be successful and wealthy. Um, I didn't do too well at that either. Um, I was successful and wealthy, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy my job. It wasn't my calling. And so the wealth, I mean, really, if I didn't lose most of it, it didn't matter. So, next step, I decided to return to the university where maybe I might learn something. And of course, at that time, I was the oldest kid in the classroom. But it's at university that I discovered the existence of social anxiety disorder because by then it existed. And then by understanding it and realizing it, it clarified all of my anger and my self destruct and my moods and my confused behavior. So, what I did, long story short, I got my requisite degrees and became a behaviorist. And my work there since then has been working with persons experiencing social anxiety and their comorbidities. That's been pretty much my life's goal. It's a happy one, it's a satisfying one. And I really don't know how to do anything else. So here we are.
Right. And from that, what made you decide to start blogging and sharing your information online?
Well, that's blogging is the nature of the beast in today's industry, in today's life. If you don't blog, um, no one knows who you are. If you feel like you have something to offer, something you want to share with people, you have to blog. I have over 1,400 people who I work with on social anxiety disorder. I just got my first one from India, which is great. I don't have many from other areas, but from China, none. None from North Korea yet, but I'm working on that. Otherwise, they're coming in from all over the world. How can I deal with them? If I don't blog, we're not going to get that information out. We're not going to be able to talk to them. I also publish regularly, and I've never met an author in the world who doesn't want his works to be read. Sorry, that's the nature of the beast. And so the blog just expanded and expanded to involve people who wanted to know, who needed to know what social anxiety was, who needed to understand that it's not being properly resolved. And by the way, on this blog, we welcome other writers who would like to share their experiences and their expertise. And I'm waiting for someone in particular, but I know she's not been feeling well. But outside of that, blogging, there's no choice.
Right. Yeah. I think it's definitely a great way to get yourself out there, to get your writing out there, to get everything out there. Um, and hopefully I can get my writing on your blog soon too, once I get a chance.
I mean,
I
honey, you've been ill, and my God, you work harder than I do, and I didn't think that was possible. So, yeah, more power to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad like there are quite a few posts that you've written for my blog as well that I think is really amazing. And I'm gonna be linking down below if anyone wants to read more about that or go to your blog and read your writing. And if anyone is interested, they can find the link. Um, so going back to university and
Yeah.
what really drew you to psychology? Was there something that made you feel like you could connect with that and that social anxiety was something you wanted to pursue in the future with psychology?
Yeah. There's a bit of irony there in that is that I have great difficulty with current psychology. I know it's motivated by the last 200 years of the disease model of mental health. It's a very negative thing. And so I went more towards behaviorism. Behaviorism is a broader thing. Behaviorism invites all of the different methods and methodologies and concepts for trial and error, where when you just deal with psychology, you're dealing with a licensing board. And the only licensing board I would be dealing with is the California licensing board, and they won't let you do anything beyond cognitive behavioral therapy. So I went to behaviorism because I'm less of a psychologist and more of a philosopher and scientist because of um, well, psychobiology and proactive neuroplasticity. That's all science.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
and right now, I mean, like 80% of give or take of therapists immediately draw on cognitive behavioral therapy as the panacea for everything that ails you. And a one size fits all solution is it cannot comprehensively address our complexity. And frankly, I think it's irresponsible. Clients have unique childhoods and backgrounds and environments and desires and interests. So radical behaviorism, which is my discipline, it welcomes all other methodologies that might have a chance of focusing on an individual personality. And so I will tell you now, for all the world, I am woke, WOKE. I am firmly DEI without diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't think we're human beings. We have no compassion. I hope I get letters for that, but that's fine. So that's pretty much why I got drawn towards it. Of course, yes, was my own social anxiety disorder. That's why I focused on behaviorism. And once I discovered the reality that it's not a death sentence like anything else, it's something that can be mitigated and worked on, but not with the old, not with the old ways. There had to be new ways and new evolutions to make it.
right. And I love what you said about how it's not one size fits all because I've had that issue as well. Like especially with therapy. Like I've tried so many different things, but nothing has felt right until recently when I found a therapist that really worked for me. So I think,
Yeah,
everyone, like you said, everyone is different. Everyone has a different background, childhood
yeah,
experience, everything. So I
yeah.
think psychology, they try to put everyone into the same box, but it doesn't work like that. We're all so different.
Yeah, it can't. And what I do with clients, because I'll work with 10 or 12 in a workshop at once. Not more than that because I can't handle it.
Right.
But what I do is I give them all of the options that I'm aware of, all of the different methods. And it's kind of like the old metaphor where you throw spaghetti up on the ceiling
Yeah.
and what drops works for you. Different methods work for different people. And that's why a program of recovery has to be focused on the individual. You can't just broaden it. You can give them all the concepts, but you really have to figure out who the individual is and what works for them. And they have to do it too. They have to do all the work. It's like I give them all the tools and the fertilizer to make the garden grow, but they got to kind of bring it out of the shell and make it work. So it's a very mutual process.
Right. And talking about your workshops and the people you help, do you want to tell us a little bit about rechanneling and how you help people with social anxiety?
Well, beyond what we're talking about, again, with the individualized support, that's very important. I work very closely with them. We do of course, like I said, I have 1,400 people that come into um, not workshops, but just general talks and things like that. In the workshops, we do 10-week workshops, but then we stay with them for a year beyond the workshop to make sure that they're getting it because it's a long accumulated process. So we don't just say, okay, 10 weeks, done, you're out. We continue to work with them at no cost, just to make sure that they're growing with it, that they're understanding it. It is social anxiety disorder is so complex. It exists on counterproductivity. So everything that people tell you about social anxiety, everything you learn about social anxiety is probably wrong because social anxiety thrives on counterproductivity, on giving you information that is intentionally not right, that will throw you off the track. It's just a very cunning little disease. It really is. Um, so yeah, we work closely with them. What was the question?
Just a little bit about rechanneling, the method you talk about often, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, rechanneling was an old concept that I've kept up with because now people know what it is. Rechanneling just meant taking your anger, your angst, your anxiety, and rechanneling it into something positive. Very simple. That was the whole concept of it until it got very big.
Right.
But we have a certain regimen. Um, Let me see if I can kind of put it down in the best words possible. The primary goal of recovery from social anxiety, and by the way, related conditions, and that includes all the 8 anxiety disorders in the DSM, all the 5 or 6 depression disorders, because they all came from the same doctor. They all kind of have the same recovery method.
Right.
They all have negative self appraisal. Okay, they all dislike themselves. So we come up with the primary goal is again the mitigation of the irrational fears and anxieties because they're not real, they're irrational, they're subjective. And then we do 3 things. We replace or overwhelm the negative thoughts and behaviors with healthy, productive ones. That's pretty much where cognitive behavioral therapy, they're pretty good at that. They're part of that. Dialectical, maybe a little bit. And then the second thing is we learn how to produce rapid, concentrated, positive stimulation to offset the abundance of negativity in our brain's metabolism. In other words, our brain has been overwhelmed with toxic information since childhood. Okay, that's when it all starts with everybody. Some are susceptible, some aren't. Those are susceptible become socially anxious or depressed. So there is a way with proactive neuroplasticity of deliberately challenging all the negative information with positive information. Neuroplasticity is when the brain changes with every piece of information and experience. So if we can control that, if we can start telling the brain, okay, enough of this hurting me, enough of this depression, enough of this self-annihilation, how about some positive stuff? We tell the brain, no, this is the right way to go, with positive personal affirmations, with a lot of other work. But we learn to control our brain's metabolism. And that's the scientific part, which is very important to me because I like science. It has kind of a basis for it. And of course, we have to regenerate our self-esteem because our self-esteem has always been there, but it gets usurped by all this negative nonsense that we have to go through with our social anxiety and other conditions. The other thing is that we've learned that with social anxiety and other conditions, we have obviously dual hemispheres in our brain, right and left brain. But with social anxiety, we just exist in our right brain. Emotions, desires, fears, all of that stuff. And we ignore the left brain, which is the rational, the responsible, the understanding of why the right brain is doing what it does. So a lot of recovery is trying to rebalance that, trying to balance our hemispheric synchronization, as they call it, so that we can see, all of the emotional stuff is here and it's real and it's valid and we should buy it. But we have to look at it from a different viewpoint. We have to look at it from the rational perspective of, okay, you have it, but why? Is it important? Is it rational? Is it understandable? Is it valid? So we tend to really try and balance our neural network by bringing in the side that we neglect, that hurts our social anxiety. Am I making sense?
Yes, absolutely. At least
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay. Because sometimes I'm never sure what I'm talking about. Good.
No, I like what you said, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Like I personally got
Okay.
diagnosed with social anxiety disorder when I was a young adult,
Okay.
late teens. And that does make a lot of sense to me because I think people with social anxiety do tend to dwell on the emotional a lot and tend to be very negative towards themselves and like everything around them. So I can
Mm-hmm.
understand how that would help a lot with people who have social anxiety.
Yeah, it's important. We need a balanced brain to
Right.
be coherent, and we don't have a balanced brain because social anxiety lives over here. It built this little home over here. It's got a castle and moats and all that stuff. It's very powerful, very cunning, and you kind of have to live it to know it. But yeah, we have to work on balancing it, on becoming a fuller and more understanding, compassionate, self-compassionate, empathetic human being.
Right. Absolutely. And like, is there any advice you'd give to someone who is suffering from social anxiety? And is there anything on your site that maybe they could visit and get more information and get some resources that could help them?
Yeah, everything on our site is geared towards social anxiety and related conditions. And by that, I mean all the anxiety disorders because they're all collaborative: PTSD, OCD, ADHD. I don't, I have very few clients who actually only have social anxiety.
Right.
70, as you know, 70% of them, if not more, also have depression. And many of them have, they go towards alcoholic abuse, which is now a disorder.
Right.
And I've had clients with, I have one wonderful client, God bless him. He's one of my favorite people. He's been with us for like 5 years now. Has PTSD, ADHD, OCD, social anxiety disorder, but no depression. I mean, so go figure, he's like, he's gotten to the point where he says, okay, I've got all these things. Fine, I'll deal with it. I'm not depressed about it. So there's always a combination. And the important thing, too, is to find out which is the one that's actually the dominant one. Is our social anxiety making us depressed? Or is our depression making us socially anxious? Or is our avoidant personality disorder making us socially anxious in terms of certain situations or generalized? It's very hard to focus on the underscore, to focus on the one that is the dominant factor. But it's very important to eventually find that in terms of recovery, because although all recovery comes from a general perspective of methodology, each one still has to be individualized.
Right.
So I just found that out recently because I was trying to figure out whether I was depressed because I had social anxiety or whether my social anxiety made me depressed. And I figured it out and it made life even better. So you never know.
That's I'm glad you figured that out. Yeah. I Most people who have social anxiety, like you said, do have other things going on too. I have like both depression and social anxiety, so I
Yeah.
think I'm very like textbook in that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we got to know ourselves. And that's the biggest problem with people who come into these things. Um, they're afraid to know. They don't want to know. So we have to kind of really make it easier for them and try and see if we can't get them to allow themselves to look a little deeper into what's going on in their frame of reference.
Right. Absolutely. So I will be linking your website and everything just in case anyone is interested in any of the resources you offer or any of the information you offer, want to sign up to work with you or anything else they're interested in. So basically, if anyone listening or watching is interested, please check the link in the description for his blog, his website, where you can find all this information. And to shift a little bit, I thought we could answer a few fun questions to keep this a little bit more light. I think we've talked a lot about psychology, but just to keep it
Okay.
fun at the end.
Well, with one quick addendum here, and that is the fact that people who have social anxiety and other things, you need to talk to someone. Number one,
Yeah.
preferably someone who's knowledgeable, but at least a friend, a family, an acquaintance, someone who's supportive.
Yeah.
You need to know that it is not your responsibility. You didn't ask for social anxiety disorder. It happened to you as a child. And you need to stop beating yourself up for your symptoms because you got them. Let's just deal with them. Um, I mean, we're defined by our character strengths, our virtues, and our achievements. We're not defined by our social anxiety. It's like the old analogy I give: when we break a leg, do we define ourselves by the person, by the injured limb? Are we, I am the injured limb, or are we a person who has an injured limb? Same with social anxiety. Are we the social anxiety person, or are we just someone who has social anxiety? Okay, fun stuff. I'm done.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Actually, I think anyone who might be suffering from mental health issues, including social anxiety, please do seek help or talk to someone at least. Moving on to the fun questions.
Okay,
Who do you admire most and why?
I favor the underdogs because I'm a late bloomer. So I favor the people who spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years trying to figure out what the hell they're doing, what life is about, or trying to, create their craft. So I like the people who they throughout life until they hit their stride. And that would be Charles Darwin. That's a good one to start with. J.R.R. Tolkien, another late bloomer. Samuel Jackson, the actor, another one. Susan Boyle, the singer, on Britain's Got Talent. These are people who have been working and working and working and working all through their lives, just trying to affirm their belief in themselves. And somebody who's worked that hard and finally achieves it, those are the people that I grasp onto and I commiserate with and I tend to fall in love with.
Yeah, that's really admirable, actually. It takes a lot of courage to find what you love and to keep doing that.
Oh, and to keep going and going when everyone says, shut up. Yeah, when everyone says, stop, you don't know what you're talking about. Everybody who's a success has heard that throughout their life. Yeah, so I admire them. I admire that kind of people.
Yeah. What is one place you've always dreamt of going?
Okay. Um, by the way, so everyone knows I've gotten these questions in advance, so I had time to think about them. So um, I've been lucky to travel extensively in my other life, my earlier life. I was at the Cannes Film Festival a couple of years. I saw Francis Ford Coppola standing in a corner, weighing 90 pounds when he won Apocalypse Now. Um, so I spent time in Europe, London, Espoo, Finland, a little bit of time in Japan. But I'm not a traveler. I hate traveling. Okay, I don't enjoy packing, unpacking. I like my home. I like the comforts of home. So the one place I've always dreamed of going is back to my early adolescence. That's where I want to travel to. Knowing what I know today with the temperament and wisdom I've kind of managed to scrape together, I'm not sure I'd do anything differently, but I think I do it with panache. I'd have a lot more fun knowing the consequence. And I think it's an incredible book. And that's going to be the second one. So that's where I want to go back to.
That's a really good answer. Do you have a favorite TV show at the moment?
Do I have a what, huh?
Do you have a favorite TV show at the moment?
A TV show or something like that? Yeah. I can tell you what I don't like. Um, I don't understand the hero series, the Marvel heroes. I
Yeah.
get confused by the dimensional jumping. I don't know who's good or bad. And it's very hard to be sympathetic with a superpower because most of them suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, like our current politicians. So I like English humor. And I had the great luck of spending a semester studying with John Cleese of Monty Python Flame, Monty Python fame. And he had a series about 20 years ago called Faulty Towers. It's an English series that only lasted 12 sessions, became one of the most winning series in the world. They're redoing it. He's involved with it. Rob Reiner is redoing it. And I think when it comes up this year, it's going to be one of the great series. So I'm looking forward to that. It was one of my favorite series. Sorry, no one's ever heard of it. Look it up, watch it. You'll like it.
I will check it. I also am preferring like British humor these days or like English humor. I don't know, it's so like different and it's so like, I don't know, more like funny in a more cynical, sarcastic kind of way. I really like.
Yeah, a little bit more intellectual, cynical, quick on. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like John Cleese. I like the whole group, but I only know him. So
Do you have any goals in life that you're looking forward to achieving?
yeah, please, God, help me finish the book on social anxiety disorder. Uh, it everything else I write like you a lot. I'm prolific. The book is just giving me problems because it has to be, it can't be perfect. but it has to work for other people.
Right.
Other people have to understand that. First of all, my understanding of social anxiety is that experts and others in the last 30 years have misunderstood it and have been doing it wrong, because social anxiety exists on a counterproductive aspect. They Everything they do is counterproductive, meaning everything they make you do is really the wrong thing for you. So all the things we learned about social anxiety have pretty much not been right. And we have to learn how to understand social anxiety and how cunning and manipulative it is before we can actually get in there and alleviate the problems that we have with it. If we don't understand the problem, we can't fix it.
Right. That makes a lot.
So yeah, so the book is there's nothing new in it because there's nothing new in the world, but it is showing a new format addressing social anxiety, which has not been done before.
Right.
And I think that's important. Right or wrong, it's another option. And so, but it's been difficult. I agonize every morning, having to write another 2 or 3 pages, but I'll get it done by the fall, and then we'll see what goes from there. So that's my goal.
I wish you all the best with that. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate that. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, just don't forget how much I respect you and your blog. We've been going together for a long time. I love your series on mental health, and I'm going to hold you to that article, and we'll see what goes from there. But this is not the end of us. It's just we'll continue working
Absolutely.
together. That's important.
Thank you.